excited to be here today. So I'm Samia, and I'm just going to bring Chelsea around with me everywhere I go to do my introductions because she is like the hype girl introducing everyone. It's great. I have a bit of a background in finance. I was in banking and finance a really long time, like over 15 years. Owned a clothing store with a friend of mine, a designer women's clothing store for about 6 years. And I started having babies. So I sold it to take care of the kiddos. And my husband and I ventured into real estate development, which was super fun. We started just buying vacant lots and we hired a general contractor and we started building single family homes and selling them off. And so I just really have a pretty strong background in like corporate finance because I was a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley and also in the like entrepreneurial world just from owning businesses with my husband and friends and things like that. So I really just wanted to come on here today and empower the women who are logging in this morning with your coffee or your tea and your kids and whatever you have going on, just to give you some inspiration and also some motivation on things you can do to manage your money from a practical standpoint, just simple things that make a big difference when they're done over and over again. Chelsea mentioned this earlier, but back in 2020, I did write a book because let's face it, 2020, there wasn't really much else going on. So why not write a book, right? And it's called Money Handbook. You can get it on Amazon. It's exactly what it is. It's a handbook about money. So there's chapters on investing, budgeting, how to teach your kids about money, mindsets, estate planning. It's a very like finance foundational teaching for people who maybe like did not have an upbringing in finance or weren't taught in school. Most schools don't really teach you. Even me, I went to University of Florida and the finance classes I did there, it was like corporate finance. It wasn't personal finance. So it's just really interesting. And there's this gaping hole in our education system on how to teach people how to invest and use their money to create wealth and leave a legacy. So it's one of the motivations of why I wrote this book. And just this past year, I was able to do an e-course, a masterclass, an online class, which is hosted on the Abundant platform. And it's over 3 hours of teaching. It's broken up into 5 modules. So if you're more of like a visual learner and you like the video style, that would be something really great for you to download. And once you have it, you have it. You can listen to it as many times as you want. But today, I really wanted to talk a little bit about creating a legacy because we have all these kids and we're plowing concrete, mothering them. And so I think it's really important to have some type of legacy at the end of all of it. And I really believe that the quality of your life is truly, it's the quality of your communication. So you really want to be able to communicate to your husband and to your children what the financial goals are of the family. And I think part of that starts with having confidence to even have that language because finance is very much of a language. It's like learning another language if it's something that's foreign to you, but you can absolutely do it. It's way easier than Spanish, I promise. So the thing about it is you want to be able to transfer your knowledge to your kids. I think a lot of people think generational wealth is just money, but it's simply the transferring of something that's valuable. And so knowledge is part of that. I mean, of course, money is part of it too, but if they don't know what to do with the money, they're just going to end up squandering it. And there was like this crazy study done. The NASDAQ did this study on like all these high net worth families. And by the third generation, the money was gone, which is nuts. And 70% of them. So 7 out of 10 families, you've got the parents like yourself, you're building a brand, you're 24/7 pushing forward, whether it's social media or your husband's, a neurosurgeon, whatever the case may be, you leave money to your kids. They work and then they leave money to their kids, which are your grandkids, and then it's gone. 70%, it's gone by the third generation, which is like ridiculous. It should absolutely last longer than that. And part of the issue is the illiteracy. Like these kids are not being taught on how to multiply what is given to them. They just travel the world and start a rock and roll band and blow it all in Europe, and then there's nothing left. So that is what we don't want. Although it's cool if they want to do that, if there's money for that, but not if it like uses all of the pot. So anyhow, I know that there's definitely business owners listening to this, or some of you want to start a business, and Chelsea can definitely help you do that. by setting up a Shopify and giving you some ideas on branding and business building. But whether you're looking to create a company or whether you just want to have better tools and skills and you're, with you and your husband and you're not wanting to create a business, like there is definitely a lot of wonderful W-2 jobs out there. And I applaud it. I was there. I mean, I was in corporate America for a long time and there's a lot of perks to that. But as a W-2, and that just simply means when you work for a company, you get a W-2 at the end of the year, you can't pass down your 9 to 5 to your kids, right? So you want to be using the income that you're getting to create wealth and another stream of income. You always want more than one stream of income. So most of us get what we tolerate, and it's really important to not tolerate your children being uneducated in finance. And we really don't want to rely on the school system to teach our kids. It's truly our responsibility. And I think a lot of people that are like in their 60s and 70s, they had this mindset in our like American generation that Social Security was going to take care of them. And the thing about Social Security is at the time that it was put into place, the average lifespan, I believe, was 63. And Social Security started at age 65. How convenient. It was 2 years after the average lifespan, right? They're like, well, if you're still alive, you're going to have some money. Well, fast forward, it was done in like the 40s. So, fast forward to where we are now. I mean, people are living till 100. I don't even know. I think everyone listening today, I'm telling you, we're all living till 120. It's going to be like biblical times, guys, 120, like Moses. But the point is, like, our Social Security infrastructure is going to run out of money, and Congress, I'm sure, will put a Band-Aid on it and all the things, but you cannot rely on that for your retirement. It's just not enough. It's like poverty level. And I don't want you being a greeter at Walmart. It's not your calling in life. I bless all the people who are. But if you have paid for this ticket and you're on this summit, it means there's more in you and that you want more for your life and more for your kids. So all that to say, there's this really fun example I love to give. It's about the bumblebee. And I just taught a finance class the last 3 years for a school out in California. And it was one of the examples I always gave the students. And so some of you might know this about the bumblebee, but it's a super funny fact about them, but also very applicable to being a mom. So bees have to go out and get enough pollen and nectar to feed an entire hive. And when it finds like a super rich source of pollen, the bee doesn't keep it a secret. So they kind of like disperse. They go try to find pollen, and then whichever bee finds it, it comes back to the hive. But when it gets back to the hive, it communicates to the other bees through a waggle dance. Like it's literally shaking its butt. You can watch this on YouTube. It's hysterical. And it dances in a circle. Your kids will love this. So the bumblebee is shaking its butt. It's dancing in a circle. And you think it's just excited because it found pollen and it's like telling everybody in the hive. But what it's actually doing is giving coordinates, showing the rest of the bees where the pollen and the provision is. So how does this relate to legacy planning? Well, what the bee is doing is it's making a roadmap for success. And you can do the same thing for your family so that your future generations can thrive and not just be in survival mode. So be like the bumblebee. When you find sources of income and provision, do a happy dance and show your kids how to do the same. So one of the things I wanted to touch on today, and by the way, you can put questions in the chat at any point. I'll answer them. We really want to be in a position where we can build, protect, and preserve. So you want to think like a value system, not just dollars, because ultimately wealth transfer is more than just money. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like about legacy. It's about dreaming with your family. Like what are the family values that you have, and how can money, which is just a tool, help fund those dreams and visions as a family? And this is something to like sit down with your husband and talk about and dream about, and also with your kids too. So something that I think is a really beautiful thing for parents to do for their kids and giving them like a financial boost that maybe you never had when you were, 18, 19, 20, is potentially like giving them a down payment to purchase their first rental property where like they can live in one room and rent out the other, or maybe it's a duplex and they're living in one unit and renting out the other. And immediately like they are becoming a business owner, they're becoming a landlord, responsibility. And you can always obviously co manage things with them. But I would say by the time that they're like 19 or 20, they definitely should be at the level of responsibility that they can do it, especially if you've instilled all the tools along the way. So the benefit of being able to give your kids money while you're alive is the ability to mentor them. And that's what we want. Like, we really want to be our kids' first boss. And that kind of starts with like the whole allowance system and things like that. Or I don't know, some people like the star chart, like if they hit so many things during the month, like my kids are young, they're 5 and 7. So I have a little star chart for them that I got on Amazon, and it's amazing. And I can link it if you want it. And they get $10 a month if they get all their stars. And I have them give from that $10, save from that $10, and spend. So they're super young, but they're understanding the value of money and how it can work on their benefit. My son is a gainer. He just saves all of it. My daughter is a spender. She also will give her money to my son and tell him to manage it for her, and she's 5. So you start to learn their personalities as well. And then she gets upset because she has no money left and he has like $50 in his bottom drawer from like the last 5 months. And she doesn't understand why he has more than her. And it's a good conversations to have with your kids about spending, saving, and giving. And on the giving part, because you're probably thinking to yourself, how are you teaching a 5 and a 7-year-old how to give? So this is what we do. I take them to like Walmart or Target or somewhere, and we buy boxes of granola bars. They also obviously can put it in the tithing box at church. However, children are experiential. Like, they learn by experience, and generally most kids, like I'm generally speaking, are tactile, kind of like that Montessori learn by doing, learn by playing. So I like to go in the store, they purchase a box of granola bars, Cliff bars, whatever. I keep them in my car in like those side pockets in the door in the back so the kids can grab them. And anytime we're like at that stoplight at the bottom of the highway where there's a homeless person with a sign, I roll the back window down halfway and I say, "Hey buddy, this guy, he doesn't have food. Can you grab one of those granola bars from your giving fund and feed him, because we don't know if he has lunch today or whatever." And sometimes we have bottled water, sometimes we have socks, sometimes I do like those Ziploc bags and I just fill it with goodies. And I actually have my kids give these homeless people the food because they're seeing, I earned this money, I spent this money, and I'm now giving it away. And it just is super impactful when they're that young versus like dropping it in a box at the church. So I'm a big believer in tithing, obviously, as adults, but as kids, it's like a muscle. They have to learn how to give. Children don't come out of the womb knowing how to give. As a mom, the first thing we're teaching our kids how to do is share. They don't want to share. It doesn't make any sense, especially even adults who are making money. The last thing they want to do is give it away because they feel like they've earned it. And so if you start these things when they're young, it just becomes natural and part of like the ecosystem of how they manage money in their life. So that's just a little tidbit on something I do with my kids. Hopefully that can help you. But I do want to touch on wills and trusts, because there's a lot of moms listening today, maybe a couple dads peering in the background. And I think it's really important that you have a will or a trust in place. Coming from like my financial advising background, I was on a team. We managed over $300 million. It was mostly high net worth families, generally 3 generational. We were dealing with the grandparents, their kids, and then their kids. It was very complex. Lots of family trusts were in place. And I think the misconception about trusts is that people are like, oh, you're only supposed to have a trust if you're like uber, uber wealthy. But what I would say to you is, if you have any assets, your home, cars, diamonds, anything that adds up to more than $500,000, then I highly recommend getting a family trust. And you can name all of that in the trust, and it bypasses something called probate, where upon the death of someone, it goes to the state if you don't have a trust. It's called probate. And what they do is they look at all your accounts and they pay all the debts off, and they kind of reconcile the accounts for you instead of your family doing it. And they charge a fee. The state charges a fee to do this. They have basically like their own staff of attorneys. And then it finally gets to the beneficiaries. It takes sometimes 12 to 18 months. So it's awful because people's parents or parent passes away and you literally don't have access to anything until it's done going through probate. I mean, California takes like 3 years. So I tell everyone in California, I don't even care what you're worth, get a freaking trust because you do not want to be stuck in the probate system of California, which is the worst run state. But we're not going to go there right now. So anyway, the point is, trusts are a great tool to protect your wealth and to allow your beneficiaries to receive assets that were in the trust name immediately. So it's nice because it also bypasses some taxes as well. I always recommend finding a really good trust attorney. If you're working with a CPA, which I'm sure most of you have a CPA, generally CPAs have like a Rolodex of trust attorneys because they work together, and financial advisors. So when I was a financial advisor, I had like a really strong network of accountants and attorneys that we were always cross communicating and referring back and forth to each other. So that would be a really good source of like where you could find someone. I mean, good old Google is there too, but it's always better to get it from like somebody you trust. And there's two types of trust, just so you have like general language when you're talking to the trust attorney. There's a revocable trust, which is simply you're able to make changes, you can revoke it, and it transfers assets to revoke it. By doing that, you're avoiding probate and you retain as the parent full control. The second type of trust is irrevocable. It cannot be altered. So assets, homes, cars, things like that, that are put directly into the name of an irrevocable trust are no longer a part of your estate and are not subject to estate tax. So that's actually something that the like ultra high net worth people do. They'll put things in irrevocable trusts so that it gets out of their estate so that they don't have to pay taxes on it. So anyhow, a revocable trust is really the thing most 99% of people need. And if you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean to put assets in a revocable trust? All that means is my name is Samia Pedalino, okay? My checking account, instead of it saying Samia Pedalino checking, it says the Pedalino Family Trust. So things, your checking accounts, your house, things like that can be purchased in the name of the trust, but you own the trust. Got it? Okay. Questions if you have questions. So here's something super cool about it before we move on to the next thing. You can actually set guidelines in a trust and you can put language in it to clearly spell out what the money can be spent on. For instance, it could be for like educational purposes, down payment on their house, weddings, a business, not a new Ferrari, not Botox, not a year-long vacation in Europe. Like you can really decide, you get this trust money if you get a college degree, you get this trust money if you start a business, or it could be even used as a loan. You can use trust money to like loan money to your kids for business and they pay it back at a 0% interest. Like there's a lot of super creative things you can do with it. I touched on giving, but there's this really amazing avenue if you are a believer in giving, and it's called a donor advised fund. It's a DAF. And one of the reasons why this is an incredible tax tool for you, and also you're able to do the charitable giving you want, is that whatever you put in a donor advised fund, and these types of funds are opened at like brokerage houses like Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, like any type of place where there's a financial advisor, or a bank even, they have donor advice funds you can open in your name. It's there's no like, it doesn't cost anything. Just consider it like a glorified checking account, savings account, investment account type of situation. So whatever you put in the account, it's fully deductible in the year you deposit it. However, you don't have to give all the money away that year. So if someone like sells their business or has some type of cash event, they're like, man, I really want to like give 10% of this, but it's a lot of money. If you put it in the donor advised fund, you get the full write-off that year, but you can give the money over years to come. And the cool thing about this is you can actually get your kids involved and you can say to them, listen, you're in charge of giving away, I'm just going to pull a number out of $5,000 this year or $1,000 this year from our donor advised fund. I want you to find a charity. I want you to tell me why we should give the money to them. I want you to look up and see what percentage is paid to the admin, because if 90% of the charity's money is going to admin, then it's probably not a good charity. Like it starts to teach your kids how to be charitable with cash and also what to look for in charities that are reputable. So they're not, taken advantage of or things like that. And of course, you can give the money to your church too, or whatever ministry you love, but it's just a fun way to get your kids involved and actually like assign a dollar amount to them and make it a process where you can mentor them in how to give. So I think it's great teaching your kids and grandchildren about philanthropy, and it's a super fun way to do it. I do it with my kids. It's great. So let's touch on, let's see, I'm just checking the time. Okay, we're good. Let's touch a little bit on generational wealth. Oh, and by the way, the donor advised fund I mentioned, 22% of all charitable deductions are from donor advised funds, according to the IRS. So 22% of all Americans are actually already using this vehicle. And it'll be really fun to see that number increase. Hopefully one day it's like 80%, but it's just a great way to give, get your deduction that year, and then give for years to come. Okay, here we go. Generational wealth. I really just want to encourage you that if this was not done for you, it can start with you. I'm going to say that one more time. If this was not done for you, it can start with you. There has to be someone in your family who raises their hand and says, I will set the standard moving forward, because you can be the one. It is truly accomplished by so many people who have this attitude. It's finding the pollen, going back to your tribe, doing a happy dance, and showing them the way. You want to point your kids to where the provision is. And it's really about having a generational mindset. And I think it's hard because our society and our culture is very self-absorbed, very, I don't know, we're just like in this era of social media where there's such a high value on being seen, and it's a very like introspective type of thing. And so you're sort of going against what society is pushing at you to have generational thinking, because you're thinking of other people besides yourself. But as a mom, I feel it comes more natural to us because we're always taking care of people, and we're always like, whether it's the dishes or the laundry or being a house manager. I actually have that title on my Instagram, the Petalino House Manager, because it's a real thing. Or the Uber driver for all your kids, like it's definitely part of being a mom. And it's a beautiful thing because motherhood is ministry. And in a way, like, we're serving everybody in our family. We're always thinking of other people. So I feel that if anyone can think generationally, it's moms. And one of my absolute favorite scriptures, my mom used to say this to me all the time, is a generous person will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will themselves be refreshed. And it's very true. It's like the secret to living is giving, and it's having an attitude that you want to be the blessing. Like, how can you bless versus wanting to be a taker? And no one really wants to be around takers anyway. You can like sense it when you get around people and they just like want something for you. From you. It's the worst. So I wanted to open this up for questions. Oh, thank you. She shared my Instagram account. We can't avoid probate in Canada, as far as I know. That is probably very true. I love that somebody from Canada is on here. I would still set up a trust. It's always a good idea. So I just wanted to open it up for questions. I love being here today. I love just encouraging moms with money. And I wanted to inspire you to think outside the box and know that money is not a scary thing, that it's really possible to be able to manage it and to put things in place with your family, to teach them how to invest, how to give, and how to save. I have a chapter on budgeting and investing in my book called Money Handbook. And one of the things I suggest is kind of the 80-20 rule to start off with. Every family's different because it depends on how much debt you have and your debt payoff plan and things like that. But generally, it's like give 10, invest 10, and live on the other 80. If you can give more, if you can invest more, like, that's amazing. If you can live on less, if you don't have a mortgage, then obviously you can put more money towards other buckets. But I talk about like different buckets and where to put your money. God fund is giving, investment fund would be like the stock market or real estate portfolio, owning rental properties, and just giving yourself like a 12 to 18 month plan to save up for a down payment on real estate. Real estate and the stock market are two really great places to build wealth. It takes time and it's not overnight. It's not like crypto where you're like winning the lottery and it 100 X's, but it's something that you can put into place where 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you really do end up having a positive outcome. So if there's no other questions, there's a few other things going on today. I did a podcast with the girls and we talked about starting a business, launching it on Shopify. I gave some of my own personal experience. My husband and I, we started a skincare company and our first product drop is a clean SPF. I actually made this for moms because it's a multitasker. I am so obsessed with it. It has vitamin C and hyaluronic acid and niacinamide. So it's like anti-aging, sun protection. I put a bunch of stuff in it because I personally was using like 6 serums and sun protection. My husband's like, why do you have 8 steps in the morning? And I'm like, you're right. I don't need 8 steps in the morning. It's kind of excessive. So we basically just put everything into one bottle. So we talk about that, just how to like bring a product to market. And so you can listen to that today too on another track. And we did another podcast just on like the fundamentals of finance as well. So glad all of you hopped on and that you're a part of the summit. You got a lot out of today.
Thank you, Samia.
You're welcome.
Yes, we learned so much from you. And you cover a lot in your course and also on this session, and it will be available on demand. I thought of a quick question if you have a second. So
Yeah.
I follow some financial people, and every once in a while, a reel will pop up about how you can pay your kids as employees of a business, and it's tax deductible, and what that means over time for your child, and then also for generational wealth, and just like it's just a good thing to do. And I was curious your thoughts on that. Like if your child is if they have a business, because we're going to be talking about that today. If they have a business of their own, or if they work on like a family business, or
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
So probably the snippets you're seeing on social media is this. So according to the IRS, you do not have to file a tax return if you make, I believe 2025, it's $14,000 a year. You don't file. You just keep the money. You don't pay taxes on it. 14, it used to be 12, they upped it. So as a parent, you can add your child to payroll. You pay them the 14 grand a year or whatever. You could do 1,000 a month. You know, it's
Yeah,
up to you.
yeah,
They don't have to file taxes because it's under the threshold, and you get
yeah,
the payroll expense deduction. So you get a business expense from it. And with that money, they could help you with social, they could help you with your marketing. I have friends that
yeah,
do that who flip houses and they have their kids like help with the demo.
yeah,
They bring along to pick out colors for paints and tiles. Like you, however, it can be incorporated into your business, you have to have them do something. And
right.
then from that account, you can pay for private school, or you could save up and that would be their down payment for an investment property, or that's the money for their first car. Because if they're under 18, it's going to be a joint account anyway, because you're their custodian. So that is simply what that means is you're making your child an employee of your company. So you are getting the payroll expense write-off and they are benefiting because it's under the threshold of actually paying taxes.
It's so fascinating. Yes, and that is exactly what the video is about, because the amount is something like, 13,000,
Yeah,
14,
it's
something like
around
that. So
there.
yeah, that is true. So that's so
That's like a
fascinating.
write-off question. I'm really
Yes.
glad you had the cookie finance guy on there because he's
Yeah.
probably gonna go over all the fun write-offs. Another really great write-off is your car. If it's over a certain amount of pounds, I think it's 6,000 or 7,000 pounds, you can actually
Yeah.
write the full amount of the car off.
That's that's interesting. Yeah, there's so much overlap within like accounting and then financial management, because
Yeah.
they go hand in hand, but they're very separate in what they're focusing on.
Mhm.
So it's a good day to learn about both for sure.
Yes. I'm like,
Yes.
everyone caffeinate. We're going to learn about finance and write-offs today. It's going to be
Yeah,
great.
that's right. All right. Well, thank you for being on. We are going to let me look at our agenda. What's next? We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to jump back on and learn more from a bunch of other people today.
Really quick, Elizabeth has a question. She said,
Oh
up to
yeah.
what age can you do that with the kids? You can have your kids on payroll until you die. It doesn't matter. It's just a threshold in America. If it's under a certain amount, you don't pay taxes. So I would imagine at some point in their life, they're going to make more than 14 grand. And so then they start paying taxes on it. But if you're asking what age should you start, I would say probably like 8 years old is the youngest because you really have to justify that they're doing something for the business. Unless they're like the face of your brand and you have a clothing company and it's baby clothes and you're using your daughter or your son and they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, you can pay them to be in your ads, in your marketing, in your promotional materials. So it's case by case. But if the IRS were to come to you and say, why are you paying your kids? You would need to give a response. It would have to be legitimate. Hope that helps. It was super fun to be here today. Thanks for having me and enjoy the rest of the summit.